Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new NVIDIA daily update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over NVIDIA. Let's talk about what is happening to NVIDIA. Is this a concern? Is the stock falling apart? Or is this just a massive bear trap? I'll give you my thoughts moving forward. If you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. And of course, if you enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts on the charts, etc., I do have the YouTube membership section down below in the description of the video, so definitely check that out if you're interested. Where again, I share all my thoughts, post updates, technical analysis updates, options flow, etc. Every single day as the market's open and trading. So would love to have you there. Definitely check that out. But jumping into it, well, I should add the tiers, of course. Tier 1, $3 a month gives you access to all my Tesla updates, broader market updates. Tier 2, of course, $5 a month. Access to Nvidia as well. And then tier 3 for $7 USD a month gives you access to everything else, including my private access to my Discord. We have a chat room there with tier 3 members. I do chart requests every single Sunday. And of course, you get all my tier 3 posts on YouTube as well for essentially every other stock in the market when there's something worth sharing. We'll also have you there. But jumping into an unfortunate video. Down 4.5%, a pretty decent amount to be completely honest with you, right? Definitely taking the, the pain train compared to at least the other Mag 7 stocks that are, not doing atrociously, all things considered, right? But Nvidia definitely getting hit pretty hard, unfortunately, right? It was setting up pretty nicely. It was holding key levels. But like I mentioned many times, right? This drop right here, there was a bit of a concern behind it, right? Because we did technically break this low. There is a concern behind that, right? Absolutely. But overall, it still wasn't looking atrociously bad, right? It was still looking pretty decent because it was mainly above, well, this clear resistance, prior resistance, now supports. Unfortunately, today, we are below that, right? So now, again, I don't like jumping to full conclusions off of one candle, right? Let's see how tomorrow shapes up, of course. But we did lose it 183. That's not good. And we're arguably closing below this trend line. That's not good. So the way I'm going to be looking at this is as follows. If tomorrow is not a nice recovery day, and essentially as long as if NVIDIA cannot essentially recapture tomorrow 183 or higher and close above 183 or higher, right? This would be a concern, especially if we come up into it, turn it into a resistance, and then have a nice candle with a long wick that looks something like this, right? Or something like, let's say we have a candle that looks something like that. That would be a concern. I would start getting this would really start getting a concern. Already closing down here and below 183 is already a bad sign because this area that obviously was a blatant resistance that, was definitely a support for a good amount of time as well. This is a problem, right? This is a problem. This is not what, if this stock was truly bullish and it really wanted to go for those, 5 extra points higher, we got pretty close. We got to almost 196, but regardless, to $200 per share and really touch that point, we shouldn't be losing these levels like this, right? This is not how a bullish stock should perform, right? If it was truly, truly bullish and it truly wanted to make its way back into the 200s for the first time, this is not the candle you want to be seeing. Let's just say that, right? So again, let's see. Again, I'm not a huge fan of jumping to, complete conclusions off of one candle when it breaks a certain level because, there's bear traps exist. This could be a bear trap. So let's see how tomorrow goes. So, before we start jumping into, stronger conclusions, I'll say. But it's not a good start. This is not a good start to what, again, should have been a strong bullish support. And this is kind of how it goes sometimes, right? You lose key levels, you lose supports. It is what it is. That's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes, right? One thing else to look at when it comes to these kind of stocks, for instance, back here, right? When Nvidia had this massive move to the upside and then it finally stopped and it started essentially, remember this, doing pretty much nothing for a while. Honestly, this is from October 2024 to January for like 3 months. Pretty much nothing, right? Did pretty much nothing. What did it, what was the way to trade the stock here? The SMI down here with option selling, right? Because the stock just zigzagged up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. We could be in something like this. There's a chance that we're unfortunately up here though, but there's a chance that we do something like that where on the 4-hour time frame, we end up just essentially doing this as well. Where, if I go back here like this, you can see, right? We're just kind of something like this for potentially a while. I mean, the stock is strong. It'll take a lot to actually bring the stock, back down to, let's say 150 for instance. But there is a chance that the stock after this false breakout, it does, make its way down lower. Absolutely. We can see 170, maybe even 165 again. Absolutely becomes a possibility. But there's also a chance that, it just pretty much does nothing. So usually when it comes to these situations, I like to look at the 4-hour SMI because when a stock is fairly range bound, the 4-hour SMI is very potent. It's very, very potent. For instance, once this rally finally finished and the market finally finished rallying very aggressively and we started, getting this chop, right? 4-hour SMI topped. Got close to the bottom, we bottomed for at least for, like almost a week here. Keep in mind, each candle is 4 hours. And then SMI went all the way back to the top. We topped out. All the way back to the bottom. We bottomed out. All the way back to the top in the SMI. We topped out for a bit, right? Didn't do anything. Even came down a bit. And then obviously nothing happened really. Then we came up here for our SMI, once again, topped out, had a pullback, came up here, once again, topped out, had a small pullback, right? And then now, of course, up here, we didn't really get as high, of course, but we're getting close to the bottom, right? We're getting close to the bottom. So that's why I think even if we see a sharp sell-off on NVIDIA, let's say it does sell off pretty aggressively, I actually do think that the worst case scenario, at least short term, 175 roughly, right? The sort of, support range down here would be that area I would watch for on NVIDIA, because then we also get this SMI near the bottom range once again. And I do think NVIDIA down here at 175 will start finding some support, or at the very least, slow down the bleeding. This is why it's very important, and I should actually reiterate this one more time, because I haven't said this in a while. The 4-hour SMI, I personally, when I use the 4-hour SMI, I almost only use it for option selling. And the reason I almost only use it for option selling is because it's not perfect at timing the top. It doesn't time the top. It doesn't time the bottom, even though I showed you examples where it kind of did, obviously, when it's chopping. But the point around it is the fact that unless you're in like a very aggressive uptrend or downtrend, like, very, very aggressive, which don't usually happen, not this aggressive, right? This is really aggressive. It's not usually how things go, especially mega cap stocks, right? They don't usually go up this aggressively. This is pretty unprecedented, honestly. But the point I'm trying to make is the fact that I sell options because it doesn't time the bottom or the top. But the idea is, like I said, let's say NVIDIA does come down to 175, which is my kind of, that's my down target right now, unfortunately, if we don't recover 183, ideally by tomorrow, because then the SMI will be near the bottom. And what does that mean? That means that the stock, at the very least, slows down the bleeding. Kind of like up here, where, we still went higher, but it slowed down the opposite of the bleeding, the euphoria, if you will, right? For a while, right? It topped out here on Wednesday, and then it didn't really actually meaningfully go anywhere, actually super, super higher until the Friday after, a week and a half, right? I think it was. No, even the Friday after that, 2 weeks and a half, right? Just, worth mentioning. So again, if we come down around this range, I actually do think support will start to come in for the stock. And at the very least, I think the bleeding will slow down significantly. Worst case scenario, you come down to about 170, right? But again, that's the beautiful thing about selling options with the SMI. Let's say it comes down to 175. I sell puts on NVIDIA, let's say 2 weeks out, for instance, 170. I don't care what happens to the stock. It can just be doing this the whole time. It can go back down to 170, then back up and do, and zigzag. It doesn't matter what it does. The idea is the fact that the bleeding slowed down, the stock is now chopping, and you're making money on those cash secured puts. I'm just trying to really reiterate that, and what I mean when I say the 4-hour SMI is getting to these ranges, right? It doesn't necessarily mean it's the bottom and it's going to just rocket from here. No, it's not that simple. But it means that we most likely slow down the bleeding at the very least, right? So again, worth mentioning that and just kind of, re-illustrating that point. But the bigger picture is the fact that the daily has weakness, the uptrend and the bullish momentum, again, unless 183 is recaptured tomorrow, is absolutely, arguably even severely slowing down, and we might just be entering further chop within this region for potentially the foreseeable future, honestly, maybe even into earnings. So let's see, guys. Let's see. I want to see how tomorrow goes. I don't want to jump to major conclusions, so let's see how that actually plays out. But SPY just continuing to retest this breakdown, which doesn't help the fact that NVIDIA is starting to show weakness as well. That, it's not going to help the market, that's for sure. So this still just looks like a bearish breakdown into a bearish retest, into potentially a bearish continuation, at the very least, one more lower, right? The VIX is still very elevated. I talked more about this in my Tesla video, so definitely check that out if you haven't already. But, just worth mentioning that as well over here with how the VIX is looking. So again, let's see, guys. Let's see how this plays out. Let's see what shapes up from this overall. But the VIX still strong, market still volatile. And unfortunately, as the VIX is still up here, we could still see some more market weakness. But as usual, whenever the VIX spikes very aggressively, it's almost always a buy that dip opportunity, not financial advice. So anyways, thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. Peace.